you can see us. I don't know if that's good or bad, but here we are. So we are at the WASBO office in Tumwater today, and we are going to have a presentation in a few minutes from Leanne Donnelly and her Central Valley high school students from Spokane. So they'll be on in just a minute. I wanted to just give you a couple of quick updates. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please use your chat box, and we will answer those questions when the presentation is over. Also, I wanted to give you a quick update on our ASB manual. We are still working on that. We've had a lot of good feedback, and as you know, it hasn't been updated for quite a few years, so we're taking our time to get everything in there that we need. So we're working on that. Also, we're working on the template form, so thank you again for everyone that shared their forms. We had a great response to that, so we're going through those and finding the best of the best and kind of putting them together. WASBO is going to make them all generic and PDF fillable forms, and we'll have those as well. So that's an update on that. Also, I wanted to remind you about the WASBO annual conference, May 10th through the 12th in Spokane. Currently, we have 5 sections for ASB. So we have ASB audit issues and internal controls, risk associated with ASB, ASB and booster clubs, ASB internal controls and district oversight, and also the Washington State Gambling Commission will give a presentation. So you'll want to get signed up for those. Also, our next 2 meetings next month is the State Auditor's Office. We'll present on audit findings. And then in May, we have Marty's 10 hardest questions, and he's already compiling them, so it looks like pretty good stuff. So do you have anything to add, Marty? No? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You have your attendance rosters and clock hours, so just go ahead and send those to us. Again, use the chat box for questions. And I would like to introduce Leanne Donnelly and her students from Central Valley High School in Spokane, and they are going to give us an ASB budget presentation from the students' perspective. So again, this is really the best presentation of all year, I think, because this is why we're all here, is for the kids. So the meetings will be recorded, and you can, make sure that your leadership kids and your ASBs have a chance to watch this and pick up some tips too. So here we go. Thank you. Good morning, Leanne. Are you able to hear us? Okay, so you're still muted. So is there a way you can unmute yourself? Try again. Did she call in on the telephone number?
There we go.
Try again,
Now can you hear us?
Oh,
Perfect. There we go. There you go. All you guys.
Perfect. Okay, so I suppose I'll do the clicking. So we are here today to present our budgeting process at Central Valley High School. We pride ourselves that this budgeting process is based around the students. My name is Ryan Tariff. I'm the current ASB treasurer.
I'm Jason Vasquez. I'm next year's ASB treasurer.
And Mrs. Donnelly came to us. She wanted us to do this presentation, obviously, because the students lead the budgeting process here. We are in the middle of school right now, so there might be a bell here or there. So apologies about that, but we'll try to continue as best we can. All right, without further ado, maybe. Arrow button, I did. Oh, it's beeping at me. There we go. Okay, so I'll start with our philosophy and why we do this. So first off, we give equal funds to activities and athletics. We believe that our activities here at Central Valley are very important, and they should not be given less funds from athletics, so we give them equal amount of funds. We adhere to Title IX, meaning that we will give a certain sport of boys and girls equal funds. So if we give girls basketball $100, we will then give boys basketball $100. We do not give either one more or less. And this is, of course, in the same sports category. And then as far as we view a couple things not as punishments. The first one is success. If our football team is doing very well and they're going to state, that's not a punishment. We do not take money out of their funds. We take it out of the ASB funds. We give them the money so that they can travel to Tacoma or wherever they need to go to compete in a playoff or state football game. Also, officials are not a punishment. If a basketball game has 20 games a year, we do not make them pay for the 20 officials, the 20 officials that will be at the games. We pay for that. The officials are needed for a basketball game to occur. So we pay for all the officiating. That is not the club's responsibility. Yeah, I'll start. So we have revenues and expenditures, and this is kind of what the whole basis is. It's pretty simple, and our revenue sources come primarily from ASB cards. So if you are participating in a sport or an activity, there's one of the bells right there. If you're participating in a sport or activity, you need to purchase an ASB card, which we have a lot of kids who do a lot of things here, and so we make the majority of our revenue off of ASB cards. GSL ticket returns, the GSL is affiliated with all of our sports, and so whenever a parent or anyone else pays for a ticket to go see a game, all of the money throughout the entire Greater Spokane League goes to the GSL from any school. They take a cut, and then they'll split it between the 10 schools, and so we get 1/10 of that. Vending machines, just the drinks and snack machines around the school, and parking passes where students will have to pay for the privilege to park in the parking lot, obviously without being ticketed.
Okay, so here's just like charts that show the revenues we have from each of those things. So to start with, like ASB cards, it's been going, the revenue from ASB cards has been going up in recent years because we've been having more students each year that buy them, so we get more money from that. And GSL equalization from the ticket return, that money has been going down in recent years because like the cost to get buildings and officials has gone up, but our ticket price has stayed the same, so we're making a little less money from that as the years go by. And then also candy machines, we used to make a lot more money from candy machines. We don't make as much anymore because they don't have the same inventory that they used to. And the pop machines have also gone down a bit, but not as much. So we make money from those. And then parking passes is our lowest source of revenue, but we make a pretty standard amount of that each year, and it goes up throughout the year as more students can drive and buy parking passes. And then also the past 2 years, the participation fees that every student has to pay to join a sport, the district used to take all the money from that, but the past 2 years they decided to give half the participation fees to us and half the participation fees to the other school in our district, university. So we've made a lot of revenue off of those in the past 2 years.
I'd also like to mention that the parking pass money and income really depends on how we handle the situation that year. Last year we had assigned parking spots, and so we only sold a certain amount of parking passes. And therefore, initially, and these are all initial prices that we got at the beginning of the year, initially we had a lot more money, we had more money at the beginning of the year than we do this year, because this year we are doing first come, first serve. So we are selling as many parking passes as students are willing to buy. And it shows that initially first come, first serve is less, and that is simply just due to the fact that if I'm a sophomore and I get my license in November, I'm not going to buy a parking pass initially. I'm going to buy a parking pass when I get my driver's license. So initially the prices aren't as good, but it will probably surpass the $6,000 that we had last year, just due to the fact that more people are buying more tickets. All right, next slide.
Okay, and then also, so as far as expenditures and what we have to spend our money on, so the first two things we have to spend our money on earlier, we talked about as part of our budgeting philosophy, our GSL travel for all sports that go to tournaments, we pay for those, we pay for the travel, and sports officials to pay for officials for all the sports, we pay for that first. And then also we have an athletic general fund that anything that a sport needs to have in order to compete, such as like injury material, such as tape or pre-wrap, or just balls or helmets that are just sports need. We have an athletic general fund that we pay, that we have money to pay for those things. So those are the first expenditures that we pay for. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then to just show a chart about that, for athletic officials, the cost of officials has been going up recently, and so you can see that about 40,000 of our expenditures go to that first. And the travel fund, we put a lot of money in that, and in the travel fund recently we've had more teams going to state, so our travel fund is in the hole currently. And then for our activities travel fund too, for any activities that have tournaments such as debate, then we have money for those too. And then the general fund, which doesn't get money every year, but when things needed, then we put money in that to pay for things. So those are the main things that we pay for first that come out of the ASB general fund.
Yeah, and I'd also like to clarify that these numbers off to the right are what we projected at the beginning of the year, or what we put into a fund. So yeah, like Jason said, we put in a certain amount of money for travel. However, we did not anticipate that there would be as many teams going to state, which is good. Obviously, we said in our philosophy before, it's not a punishment that we're doing well. So, but then we will have to move funds around, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So after all this is done, we tallied up our revenue and our expenditures, we can do one of two things. If we have a surplus of money, we can begin a grant process, which we will explain later. And if it is, this year we project we will have money left over and we will have a grant process. But the past couple of years we have not had money left over, and therefore we do not have funds to grant to other clubs and activities. So pretty much who oversees the grant process is the finance committee. And essentially what this is the ASB executive team. And what the executive team is, the ASB officers, the soon-to-be ASB officers, the next in line. So like I would be an ASB officer, Jason would be the next in line. So there's 10 of us total. We have president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and activities coordinator, their successor. And then we will have the rest of the students were applied students. They filled out an application to become part of the executive team. And we also have, so the executive team, the difference is that the executive team is overseen by the president and the vice president, and the finance committee is overseen by the treasurer. We also have members from all the clubs and activities. So if our executive team is not representing all of the clubs, we will have the advisors or coaches send a upcoming senior or upcoming junior to this finance committee so that we have all the clubs represented and so that we are listening as equally as possible. Okay, sorry. And then, yeah, so like it says at the bottom, coaches are asked to bring juniors or seniors, upcoming juniors or seniors, to speak at this finance committee and to sit on the committee itself so that all clubs and sports are represented. And this is just showing our distribution. As you can see, we distributed, like in our philosophy, we distributed the exact same money between athletics and activities. And this is kind of our surplus money from what I can understand.
Yeah, so just after those, we talked about the auto distribution of the things we have to pay for. Any money that is left over, we equally distribute to activities and athletics through the grant process.
Perfect. So, like I said before, not only do coaches send representatives to sit on the finance committee, they also send representatives to request funds. So, and that's pretty much how the grant process works. We have the finance committee, and representatives will present themselves to the finance committee. The finance committee has the ability, they are the ones who give out the grant funds. So the clubs are going to do their best to explain themselves, why they need this money, and we'll go into that later. But like it says below, the executive finance team determines how the money is spent. And that's really where the student-led part comes in, because this grant process is all students. This executive team is all students. Mrs. Carlson, our business secretary, she will sit in on it. I believe Mrs. Donnelly will sit in on it, but it is the students who will come together and determine where these funds go. And this is just an example of a sheet that that an advisor or coach will need to fill out. It is how much money they want, what their activity is, their anticipated income from all their fundraising. Now, this is not mandatory. If a club or activity does not need funds, does not want funds, they will, or doesn't think they'll get funds, they won't have to fill this out. A good example I like to use is theater. Theater is pretty self-sustaining, and typically they will generate their own revenue, and so they will not look for an ASB grant. They will continue to do their thing. They do a great job of always coming out on top at the end of the year without any ASB help, so there's no need for them to fill out ASB grants.
Yeah, and just like, so when clubs have to fill out this sheet to request grant money from what we can distribute, and what they need to fill out is they need to talk about like how much money they're going to bring in on their own through fundraisers or donations, because like the ASB grant process is not to sustain clubs and activities, to fill gaps that clubs need a little extra money. So they have to first show that they're trying to earn money on their own through fundraisers and donations. And also on the sheet, they need to fill out what the money is for. Like if they're going to ask for money, they have to describe what they're going to need it for. Like they can say that, like, if we have a debate tournament that'll cost $500, and through our fundraisers we earn $450, but then we need $50 to pay the rest, and so that's what we'll do with the grant process, is fill the gaps with the extra money.
And we'll talk about that next slide, I believe. Woo! Yeah, so this is what the executive team considers. So obviously Title IX, we have to give girls and boys of the same sport the same amount of money. So track and field, boys track and field gets the same amount of money as girls track and field. And then the fundraising and spending ratio. So both of these can be a good or bad thing. Mrs. Donnelly gave us an example that orchestra would never do a fundraiser, but they had over 180 kids or something like that, and they needed new equipment, and they asked for a grant process, like for a grant fund, excuse me, and the finance committee was a little reluctant to give them funds because they didn't do anything to help themselves. They were just expecting grant funds. And that is what Jason elaborated on a little bit, is that how have you been able to fundraise for yourself? Have you been spending that all on things that you need or things that you want? And again, the grant process is to fill in the gaps. This is not to sustain any clubs or activities. I know that, looking at it a little weird. Sorry. The grant money is not to get you like the baseline stuff. That should be fundraising. That should be anything of that sort. That should be self-sustained. And then if you need to get that extra level, that's where the grant funds come in. Needs and wants. So like Jason said, the debate, if debate makes their students pay $450 for a $500 tournament, the finance committee would be happy to give whatever the rest is, because they made the students pay the majority. A good example of needs is like helmets. If football's helmets are out of date, they need more because there were a lot of players and there are not enough helmets. Then the grant process the finance committee will send funds their way because that's a need. But before Freddie Rico and our state championship girls basketball team, the girls would get a new jersey every year, and the finance committee finally realized that they don't necessarily need a new jersey every year. Their jerseys are fine. So the funding towards them decreased. Student participation, so how many students are in a certain club or activity. The more students there are, then the more we will consider in the grant process giving them more funds. And goods and services provided. This is just going out into the community and going out into the student body and being good examples. The orchestra before Christmas break, they'll always sit in front of doors or out in the commons and they'll just play Christmas music. And it's kind of a nice thing to come to school at in the morning, is a bunch of people playing some great music. So that also goes into consideration.
Yeah, sounds good. Perfect.
Would you like to do this?
Yeah, sure. So this is the CSO responsibility for club, sports, and organization responsibility is what we've determined that is the responsibility of club, sports, and organizations if they wish to receive ASB grant funds. So the first part is that if you want to receive grant funds, then all the members of your organization or sport must purchase an ASB or GSL card. So that's what we talked about. That's our source of revenue. So you'll help our source of revenue, and so that's needed to get the grant funds. And then also we have for the fundraising procedure that if you're going to fundraise, then the coach or advisor must follow the proper fundraise procedure, which is you need to fill out a form and get it approved by the executive team before you can fundraise. And if you don't do that and you fail to get your fundraiser approved, then you will forfeit your profit. And then also another thing is you must provide opportunities for low socioeconomic status students with the ability to participate. If you're not providing the opportunity for everybody, no matter their economic status, to participate in your club, sports, or organizations, then you're not going to get ASB grant funds. And then also at the end of every year, we have representatives from every club or sport meet at a retreat and set the expectations for club, sports, and organizations. So you must follow the expectations that we set, which we will go into on the next slide.
Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to provide an example for the equal opportunity. If a club, let's just use debate as an example, that they go to tournaments that are extremely expensive and only the more affluent students can pay for all these debate tournaments, and the lower in the SES students are unable to pay and debate will not help, then their grant, as we look at them during the grant process, they might receive less funds just because only the affluent students can provide for themselves and the lower SES students cannot go on these debate tournaments. So it's equal opportunity. Okay, perfect. Yeah, sure. So, and then the CVCSO is kind of formed through the retreat that Jason talked about last slide. We come together as a school, all the leaders of all the groups, and we kind of just meld together as a school, kind of figure out what we want to do, how we want to support each other, and that's really the start of it all. The football team would greet on the doors, greet all the students coming in the morning to promote their game, but also to make Central Valley seem like a welcoming place. Not using the R word. We have a spread the word to end the word campaign, and we take it very seriously. And so obviously if clubs are educating each other and educating their members on not to use the R word, and like I said before, advertising each other's events. Most of the football team would actually go to the volleyball games just to support volleyball as an example. And that's the basis of it. They also will send a leader to a monthly meeting, which is, instead of having the executive team meet, we'll have the CSO leaders meet to just kind of go over what other clubs have done, what we've done for each other, all that kind of stuff. And typically there's a representative from every single club, activity, sport. Anything else? No. Right. Perfect.
Need to go?
Yeah, sure, you can.
Okay, so this is just an example of after we do the grant process, how we will distribute it to all the clubs and sports, and you can see how certain considerations go into them. So ASB activities is a thing that a lot of students benefit for throughout the school. So that account had a lot of money allocated them to help all the students, and also the leadership team and all school camp obviously is things that all students can participate in, so they have more money allocated to them. And then you can just see how like different clubs were allocated different amounts of money depending on their needs or what they asked for. And like, for example, JSA at that point, this is for 2002 to 2003, the example of what we did. And for JSA at that point was a really small club who just needed like money to fill their dues. You can see that at the last, they got the lowest amount of money because that's all they needed at that time. And you can just see how different things were allocated. And then
hold on. Okay. I'd just like to add a couple things to that. And at that point, JSA had not fundraised at all. There were only 5 students or so. They didn't fundraise, and so they didn't do anything to help themselves. And so there wasn't many activities they were doing, so the finance committee didn't see it fit. Also, I'd like to, that's next slide. But I'd like to mention that that year, the leadership team raised over $15,000 or something like that, Mrs. Donnelly said. So being a large fundraising team, the ASB activities and the leadership team both got quite a lot of funds.
And then this shows the other side of that for the athletics, so how the money was distributed to them. And you can, something to take note of here is you can see that for boys or girls sports at the same level, they receive the same amount of funds, like boys and girls basketball both receive $2,300, boys and girls cross country $750. And so you can see how the Title IX consideration was taken there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a rare occasion, but there is an appeals process, and this is just on a needs basis. And a great example of this is Coach Bowden is our boys track and field coach. And let's say, for example, he fundraised and he got a new set of hurdles, or let's say just a new set of jerseys. And he gets money from the grant process to buy, let's say, the pants. And he did not get enough grants to get his pants. He cannot field the track team because not everyone on the track team has the same set of pants. So he will go to an appeals process, and we will, the finance committee will try to do our best to redistribute some of the grant money so that Coach Bowden may field a complete track team. But this is a rare occasion. It doesn't happen a lot. Usually the finance committee will be able to find any holes or we'll be able to find where funds are needed. But if we do not and we are mistaken, an appeals process is taking place.
Yeah, and as you can see on the slide, in the past we just had an appeal if anybody needed it, but so we have a goal for this year to create a better appeals process that's more official if that's needed in the future.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing is transfers, and the most basic example of this is the senior class that is leaving now and all the senior classes before typically have some money left over just from their general accounts from dances or wherever they raise money. Mrs. Carlson, our business secretary, again, will take funds from that leaving senior class and put it into the upcoming freshman class so that their money can grow and so that they will have more money when they become seniors, and they will have to pay for things like prom and et cetera. And then there are also some redistributing of ASB funds throughout the revenue expenditure process, just in case someone is lagging a little bit behind in their funds. And that might be it. Yes, so now time for questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Great job, guys. Yes, we've got some questions. It's going to take me a moment just to open this up here. So the first one says, how much are the ASB cards?
I believe $30.
$30, that's how much.
Yeah.
Great. CSO responsibility slide. Did students say if a fundraiser does not receive approval, the profits would be forfeited?
Yes. Yeah, and that we approve the fundraisers through the executive team. That's the executive team's main purpose is to approve fundraisers. And it's a very rare case that we deny a fundraiser. I don't think we have this year at all. So we do not, if they, let's say we approve their fundraiser and, or excuse me, let's say we deny their fundraiser proposal and they haven't heard word or they haven't gotten the form back and they just assume that we approved it and they go out and fundraise, which that's a big no-no. We don't do that. You have to wait for your paperwork to get back to you to start fundraising. But if they do go out and fundraise, all their funds will be forfeited. I'm not exactly sure if that goes back to ASB or we usually refund, but it's something to that effect. So you have to wait, the clubs have to wait for the executive team to approve their fundraiser before they start fundraising.
Nice. So I have several questions. People are asking, what is the R word?
Retard.
So the next one is, oh, I just lost it. Hang on. Can the senior class vote to disperse their money somewhere else?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. I'm not exactly sure where they'd send it off to. They can, yeah. If there's something specific that they'd like I don't know, they want to buy a flag or something, they'll redistribute it that way and say, here you go, underclassmen, you can have this flag for football games, or just an example.
Great. Next question is, how do you fund for low SES students for activities?
Yeah, so an example of that was that we talked about was if a participation fee will cost like $20, but the advisor could realize that not everyone could pay that, so they could just make the base participation fee $30, so the students who can pay that, and it will offset the cost of people who can't pay that participation fee.
We also have multiple and Jensen Store.
Like scholar.
Yeah, and we have multiple scholarship opportunities.
And then also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe fundraising can also help with that if a club fundraises for a trip. The track team a couple years ago, I believe 2 years ago when I was a sophomore, fundraised for primarily for students to be able, or athletes to be able to go to Oregon for a track competition. A lot of the funds we fundraised were to for a charter bus and for the hotel and all that. Just because it was something that wasn't in our original schedule, I believe, and Coach Bowden decided that maybe it would be fun to go down there and compete with some of the best athletes in the area. So we helped fundraise for students who couldn't pay for something like that.
Great. So there is a verification question here. It says, so you say that the senior class doesn't use all their funds. They can have the funds transferred into the freshman's account. They just want to make sure that they heard that correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Next question. What is the club or / activity participation fee?
It was, it's typically 40, I thought, because you pay 7, or no,
the sport
jersey.
activity fee
Yeah.
is 65.
65 participants. 60. The sport participation, I believe, is $60, and it can depend for activities, I believe.
Okay. Are the proposals all done the previous year before the budget is approved by the school board, not the current year?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. Do you charge a full price parking permit to a student who waits until spring because they didn't get their license in the fall?
Only $10.
It's only $10, so yes, it's the same amount of money for someone at the beginning. It's $10 as it were later. It's $10.
Great. Next question. So are students then paying for an ASB card, participation fees, and club dues?
Yeah, okay. The participation fees are only for athletics, and so yes, all students must pay for an ASB card at the beginning of the year, and then all students pay for participation fees when they join athletics, and if they join any club they choose to join, they do pay the dues for that as well.
Yeah. So, and then also if you're a multiple sport or multiple activity athlete or a participant, you only have to buy an ASB card once. So you only pay that fee once. If you're a 3-sport athlete, you only pay it during the fall sport, for example. And then you won't have to pay for it during winter or spring. Yeah, and not all clubs have fees.
Excellent, thank you. What group sponsors your dances?
It's a class, isn't it?
It varies.
Oh, it varies apparently between.
Some are classes, some are clubs.
So yeah, so sometimes if for prom the senior class will sponsor with their funds that they have earned from that year's homecoming. The tickets typically from homecoming go towards prom, or a club will sponsor it.
It varies depending on the band.
It varies, yes.
Great. When do new officers become active?
May.
They're trained now.
Yeah, they're currently in training. The election was early March. I cannot recall the precise date, but they were elected in early March, and they will take over sometime in May.
Okay. How many students are in your high school?
2,240.
So next question, how do you deal with capacity? If the fundraiser didn't bring in a certain amount, hold on, this is a crazy question. If the fundraiser was going to bring in a certain amount and it didn't bring it in, can you give the more money to the club?
No. I mean,
Is that a weird question? Do you need me to restate it?
Are you speaking of the grant, like we'll give them more money in the grant process at the end of the year?
It's not specific. It's just asking if the fundraiser didn't bring it. So they say they're going to try to raise a certain amount and they didn't quite get there. So then you would have to go through the grant process?
Yeah, typically we they're not usually help unless it gets to the grant process. I used the track example earlier. If a fundraiser maybe didn't get enough jerseys or something, and then of course that goes back to the need-want basis. But if it's early in the year, typically there's not a lot we can do to give funds around.
Yeah, if the fundraiser doesn't raise as much as they said they would, that's their issue.
All right, I got to go. I'm having to skip a couple because they're directed to Marty here. So next one, how do coaches or club representatives generally act when they're asked to provide service to the school? How did you get that started, and was it successful? So I think you were talking about the music, the orchestra playing the music.
Yeah. It's just the culture of the school we have here. It's just everybody's been happy to help out and provide services to everybody, and it just adds to the culture of the school that we have.
And it's also kind of just based on the leadership representation through our CVCSO. It's very, like, for example, I was a captain of the football team, and I came up with the idea that during a home game we should hold doors, because leadership kids hold doors. And not only would it create a safe environment, kids walking in, being the football players holding a door for them to come to school, but also advertising a game. So it's also just our representation. We do as we learn through our meetings every month.
Nicely done. How does your school fund equally to all sports when football is such a costly sport? And how do you balance that?
I think it's based on the needs and the wants. So football, you have to have pads, which are expensive, and you have to have helmets, which are expensive. And since there's no female counterpart to football, we don't necessarily have to worry about funding each thing equally. So they're their own entity, if you will. And then of course it's a contact sport, so we need to keep people safe. And a lot of the things that football needs is through the grant process and through the all of that stuff, because it's an essential thing. You can't play football without pads. All the jerseys, I believe, are aided through fundraising that the football team does, and anything that they want to do, like, for example, the offensive line got T-shirts. The offensive line got T-shirts. The offensive lineman paid for that. It didn't come out of any fund. So typically, it is expensive, yes, but what the ASB pays for is what they need. Anything they want, the football team does itself.
All right, you're doing great. We're almost done. How do
No,
you?
that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
All right. You didn't have any other classes. Do you limit how many fundraisers a club or sport can do each year?
No, they can do as many as they're willing to do and put the effort in.
Yeah, as long as you follow the procedure, as long as you get a form filled out, approved by ASB, you can fundraise as much as you need. Yes. Oh, yes, and you can't mimic another club or sports fundraising. For example, like selling coffee or something, like butter braids. Our FBLA does butter braids. They sell butter braids, and so not another sport or club can do butter braids.
So next question is, what does it mean to sponsor a dance?
To sponsor.
Like to sponsor a dance, put it on.
Oh.
It means to put it on and to put the effort into planning it and organizing it and to raising funds needed to do the event.
Mm-hmm. The club is responsible for that themselves if they decide to. Our DECA program does a mixer every once in a while, and so their executive members are responsible for advertising, putting up posters, and so the ASB funds don't really need to go to them for a particular mixer, and we don't. The leadership team, for example, doesn't need to help advertise for them. They do that themselves.
Awesome. How long are the new members mentored?
Yeah, so till the seniors graduate, we're always giving them advice. So I'd say 2.5 to 3 months. We already have the upcoming officers in our executive team, and they are learning the ropes. We already walked them through fundraising proposals. They've kind of gotten a feel on how Mrs. Donnelly leads things, how our agendas look, all of that. So they're already pretty well trained as of right now, but the time we have left with them is just clarification, getting their feet wet a little bit and having them do some of the stuff, obviously, when their time comes in May. And we're just here to help them. So their training process goes till the time school ends, essentially, and the seniors are gone.
Thanks. How does the grant process start for each activity or club at each school?
Each school. Do you mean like elementary and middle schools, or do you mean like other high schools across the state?
I don't know. I just got somebody that typed in. So we can maybe come back to that if Lisa would like to add in a little bit more information for us. So
well, I can kind of answer that if you'd like. Well, Mrs. Donnelly, who's sitting behind me, she just said that it's kind of something we do at CV. It may be unique. We don't take it off of anyone else. This is how we do it. This is how our grant process works. We're not really aware of anyone else as far as outside of our district, how they do it. We just focus on what we do here.
Great. Do you do any large-scale fundraisers as a whole ASB?
No, the food drive.
Car raffle. The car raffle.
So the past 2 years we did a car raffle for an ASB fund that would be used by all clubs and sports, and it was essentially a Ford dealership sold us a car, I believe, for cheaper, and then all members of all clubs and activities, or most of them, would sell these raffle tickets, $20 a piece, I believe. And that helped raise money. So that was like a collective thing. Is the food drive considered that? Because all the sports kind of, like I know the football.
But it's charity.
Okay, that's more charity. Gotcha. Okay.
So yes, we have done those.
Okay. So the next question says, clubs first have to be recognized as an ASB club in order for them to have an account and get money, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, moving down. You guys are doing such a good job. They have more questions. All right. You mentioned that you fund equally each sport, boys and girls track, for example. If the girls track team didn't ask for the money and doesn't necessarily need it, do you give it to them anyway?
Yeah, I love it.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we have to by law.
Yeah, we're all legally obligated to.
Okay. Clarification question, what does GSL stand for?
Greater Spokane League. It's kind of it's comprised of 6, including us, 6 4A schools, which are the largest schools in the state, and 4 3A schools. I can name them all, but yeah, it's not.
Okay. How often does the executive team meet?
Twice a week, so Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Wow, that's dedication. So Lisa has gotten back to us about that other question. She was asking specifically about high school, the grant process, how do you start it in each high school?
How did it get started here?
How did it?
How did it? I thought it
Been here
was.
25 years. That's been for 25 years.
Yeah.
Because we've always had it in our school.
Yeah, and as like I said, we're not sure how anyone else does it necessarily. We're just focused on what we do, and this is how we've always done it, and it's always been effective. So I believe we'll continue to do it this way.
Good. All right, so there is another follow-up question asking, does your school have an ASB card and an activity card? And do you track
No.
clubs and how many members they have?
We have one card that we do track anything.
We have one ASB card that's for all athletics that anyone in athletics and activities has to purchase, and we do track how many members clubs have.
Nice. All right, last call for questions, folks. Oh, hang on, there's another one. I just also want to share that periodically the attendees are saying what an absolutely outstanding job you're doing, and to thank you very much. So with that, I have one more question before we flip it over. Could you share your forms with us? The forms
an ASB form?
to share.
You want me to go grab one?
No, we'll just send them to us.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mrs. Donnelly said she'll just send you a form, an example form. We've kind of switched it now. They're a little different from the old ways, and I've had to experience the shift throughout this year, but they're pretty simple. It's just you need 4 signatures, when the ASB approved them, and then we have these new reconciliation forms which have to be signed off on as well, but that will all be sent.
Yeah, we'll send you a form.
Well, thank you. And just for everybody out there listening, I will go ahead and have those posted to the website under the presentation along with the recording today. So you can watch for those. So the last question I have here is, what is the CV Club?
CV Club. Oh, like the CV.
CSO?
Yeah, CSO.
So when we're referring to the CVCSO, that stands for Central Valley Club Sports and Organizations. That was just that's just what we call the meetings when we get representatives from all the clubs and activities into one group. That's the Central Valley Club Sports and Organizations.
Yeah, everyone's being represented. So I guess you can consider it an entire Central Valley club. It's just representatives from all clubs and sports so that we can all get together.
All right, and so the next question is, what advice do you have dealing with the different atmospheres of the school, and how are you getting people involved?
Dealing with the different atmospheres.
Ask them what they want.
Yeah, I mean, we just we try to ask the students what kind of activities we want. We try to plan activities that will appeal to all different groups of people, and we try to give all clubs that have different atmospheres equal representation and equal advertisement for their events.
Yeah, and also the retreat that we do in June that we spoke about during the presentation, that's a really good way of getting used to different worlds, as you put it. We spend the night at Central Valley, and we spend the good part of 2 days working together, getting an understanding of what all the clubs and activities and sports do. For example, every single thing that goes on at Central Valley was represented, and each one had a butcher sheet of paper, and they just went out what went on behind the scenes and how everything happens during their club sport or activity, what people see on the outside and what actually happens. And we just spent a lot of time going around and reading these things, and that really helped us understand what all the other things do. I'll just use an example of tech crew. During plays, the technical crew puts it all together, and a lot of students see them as builders or really good with lighting, but a lot of students don't realize how much work those kids put in. A lot of them will stay till midnight working on a production. So, and I didn't understand that. So it was really helpful to go through. That retreat really helped us as a school. And then due to that retreat, we are then unified and more motivated to put certain things on.
Wow.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, you've done a wonderful job, and this is Marty. And Central Valley didn't get picked randomly. You got picked because I know about you. So if you could share a couple of things with everybody here about the culture of your school. Tell them how you picked a homecoming court.
Oh yeah, so our homecoming king and queen is picked by random royalty. Students are randomly selected and then put through like competitions such as rock, paper, scissors to determine the homecoming king and queen. So it's not so anybody technically has a chance to become it. And we just our school has a culture of just everyone helping out each other and everyone on equal footing. There's not things that are better than others, and just smiling and making sure everyone just make sure people enjoy being at school.
And I think it also branches just from leadership being involved with everything. Leadership has representatives, and I use the example of the football team holding doors. The football team is not a bunch of kids who are going to pick on people. And that's just because the football team has leadership representatives in there who are leaders on the football team as well, and who will make sure that none of that happens, and make sure instead of picking on people, the football team is holding doors for students and being a good example in the community. And so the leadership aspect of it, it touches everything at the school, and that in turn helps the leaders of those clubs better educate their members on how to portray themselves and just how to serve CV as best they can.
So brag a little bit about your unified sports, the support you give to unified sports.
Yeah, and the ASB officers go to a camp called Mount Triumph in the summertime in July, and Jason hasn't gone to that, but he will this coming July. I was privileged to go to it this year, and that was one of the things that made Central Valley stand out, was that we have a club, we have Unified, which brings together these kids who are normally I don't want to say segregated, but split apart. They're not really involved all that much, and we took it upon ourselves to get them involved, not only just with themselves but also with students. And so students can not only participate with these kids in need, but also can come and support these kids in need. We had a unified basketball game in December or January, and the band came and played, and there was a good student body there. A bunch of other unified teams came, and there were concessions opened and everything. So we take unified very seriously here, and in turn that has branched out to other schools who have started doing something similar to unified, or the exact same thing as unified, bringing kids who need help to participate in these fun games.
So what do you do if you have an officer who doesn't make the grade, who just isn't pulling their weight? Do you have a process that you go through with maybe occasionally an ASB or club officer that's not doing their job?
There's stuff in the Constitution that we haven't had to do in about 10 years.
Yeah, they're obviously like following the Pride Code and everything, but it's very rare that something like that happens. Usually if you were elected or you were willing to make the commitment, you're not going to jeopardize your position.
Yeah, we do have a process in our school constitution if that was needed, but it hasn't been needed to do in a long time because we haven't had problems with that.
Yeah, it's usually a commitment. You wouldn't want to get all this way and then get kicked out. So it's very rare.
Well, I'm going to say a couple things, and Brianne can. I think for everyone that's out there, you get a sense of what real student voice and real student engagement is. And your advisor, who I've known for a long time, has created that condition, but you, all the students, have carried that culture on to your whole school. Those of us that have followed the legislature passing requirements for financial literacy, you as ASB officers have met those. I think it's really interesting that you know the big picture, you know the whole philosophy around it. You had to turn to your advisor for some of the details, costs and things, but you're in a position to really make those good judgments. So congratulations and thanks for being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I would like to
Oh,
thank
no.
you too. I remember when I was just getting new into the ASB, I watched some students give a presentation, and it really moved me because I know in the school I was in, we didn't have a lot of student leadership, and we didn't allow them to make a lot of the decisions, which is the whole point behind the ASB. So I hope there's some attendees out there today that realize that the reason that we're working with the ASB is for the student leadership and to see them get the financial literacy that they need and to work on these budgets. That's going to take them into college and into life and into their professions, and to have advisors that are helping mentor them, it's just great. And so hopefully if your ASB advisors or someone in your district wasn't able to watch this presentation today, to view that in the recording, because I know it changed the way our school district looks at things, and so I hope it does that for you too. So thank you to Leanne and the students of Central Valley Spokane. You did a great job, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.
All right, so are there any other questions out there? No, just a lot of fantastic feedback from the audience saying how really an outstanding job presentation, your knowledge level, which is, you know, echo what Marty had to say. And it's really encouraging to know that there's that level of professionalism out there. So good job on that. And the other thing is that there was an attendee who shared that we will also have the forms that you're requesting in our new manual that is coming out. So, you know, we would be really pleased to include what you guys have put forward in our ASB manual, so you'll be published.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so if there's no more questions, then I think that we are good. And again,
Okay,
everything
cool.
is open on the WASBO website for the annual conference. If you have more information, you're welcome to call the office. And please send your clock hour forms to me. And with that, I will bid everybody a good day and have it be a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.